Bullies insulted her, thinking she was ordinary. Then witness what happened next. It all began on the first day at a new school, where the air was thick with whispers, laughter, and the quiet tension that follows someone who doesn't quite fit in. The girl stepped through the hallway with quiet confidence, wearing simple clothes and carrying a faded backpack. To most students, she looked like the perfect target, someone ordinary, someone who wouldn't fight back. The popular group watched her from a distance, exchanging smirks and cruel remarks. They saw her as invisible, not realizing that the calmness in her eyes held stories of strength and resilience far beyond their understanding. When lunchtime came, she sat alone at the edge of the cafeteria, quietly opening her lunchbox while the others pointed and laughed. They whispered that she was strange, that she didn't belong, but she never flinched. Instead, she carried on as if their words were nothing more than passing noise in a world too small to understand her silence. Days passed, and the bullying grew crueler. Books were pushed off her desk, her things were hidden, and laughter followed her down every hallway. Yet she never raised her voice. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was discipline. Each morning before school, she trained in her small backyard, her movements sharp and controlled. Her father, a retired instructor, had taught her that real strength doesn't come from anger, but from knowing when not to use it. She had grown up mastering self-control, learning how to stay calm even when the world around her tried to break her. The bullies mistook her quiet nature for fear, but she was far from afraid. She was waiting, for the right moment, the right reason, to remind them that not every fight needs to be loud to be powerful. That moment came one afternoon in the gym. The bullies surrounded her, mocking her in front of the crowd, demanding she show some courage. They pushed her, expecting tears, but instead she stood firm, her eyes calm and steady. When one of them tried to shove her again, she stepped aside with effortless precision, letting the bully stumble past her. Laughter turned to confusion, and when he tried again, she moved faster, graceful, controlled, and impossible to touch. Within seconds, the crowd fell silent. No one had ever seen her move like that. She didn't attack, she didn't shout, she simply defended herself with quiet mastery, her every motion smooth and exact. The coach rushed in, shocked, asking what happened, and even he stood speechless as he watched the scene unfold. From that day, everything changed. The bullies who once laughed at her now avoided her gaze. Some tried to apologize, others simply stayed silent. But she didn't need their words. She continued her days just as before, quiet, calm, focused. She hadn't proven them wrong to seek approval. She had done it to protect her peace. The school never forgot what they saw that day. They learned that true power doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't seek revenge. It restores respect. And the girl they once mocked became the symbol of strength no one saw coming. The bullying went on for days, growing more ruthless with every passing moment. Each morning, as she walked through the crowded halls, whispers followed her like shadows. Students bumped into her on purpose, pushing her books to the floor, leaving cruel notes taped to her locker, and laughing when she bent down to pick them up. She heard it all. The laughter, the mocking voices, the judgment, but she never once reacted. She moved through the chaos with quiet composure, her head held high, her silence stronger than any insult they could throw. Her calmness began to confuse some students. They started to wonder why she never fought back, why she never shouted or cried. But she had her reasons. She didn't come to this school to impress anyone or prove herself to people who didn't matter. She was here to study, to move forward, and to stay focused on her goals, even when the world around her tried to break her spirit. What no one knew was that behind her gentle eyes and quiet nature lived a kind of strength they couldn't comprehend. She came from a family known for discipline and perseverance, where physical and mental strength were a way of life. Her father was a respected trainer, and her mother had once been a professional athlete. From a young age, she was taught that silence is not weakness, but control. Every morning before dawn, she would wake up, tie her hair back, and train in the backyard. Her movements were precise, powerful, and graceful, reflecting years of practice. Her father's words echoed in her mind every day. True power doesn't need to be shown. It speaks when the time is right. She carried that lesson with her everywhere she went, even in the hallways filled with cruel laughter. She knew that losing her temper would only make her like them, and that was something she would never allow. But fate has its own timing. One afternoon, everything changed. It was supposed to be an ordinary day, but something about the way the bullies looked at her told her trouble was coming. They waited for her near the gym, their voices full of mockery and arrogance. They wanted to humiliate her in front of everyone, to break the quiet girl's spirit once and for all. She stood there, listening as they laughed, feeling the eyes of dozens of students watching. And then one of them made a mistake. He pushed her too hard. Her backpack fell, and her patience fell with it. In that moment, the calmness in her eyes turned into focus. She moved swiftly, without hesitation or anger, just pure control. With a graceful motion, she sidestepped the next push, using her balance to make her aggressor stumble forward. The crowd gasped. The same girl they thought was ordinary had just revealed a strength none of them saw coming. And this was only the beginning. The gym was filled with laughter, sneakers squeaking against the floor, and the sound of bouncing basketballs echoing across the walls. She had come there hoping for a quiet moment, but instead she found herself surrounded by the very people who had spent weeks tormenting her. The bullies circled her like predators, grinning, their voices dripping with mockery as they demanded that she prove she could stand up for herself. She stayed still, her eyes calm, her expression unreadable. Their laughter grew louder as one of them shoved her shoulder, trying to make her flinch. But she didn't move. When the bully pushed harder, she simply stepped aside, her movement quick and precise, almost effortless. The boy stumbled forward, confused and embarrassed as his friends burst out laughing. But the laughter quickly died when she turned slightly, her eyes steady and unafraid. Something in her silence unsettled them. It was the kind of calm that comes from someone who knows exactly what they are capable of. Another bully stepped up, determined to scare her, his voice louder now, trying to hide the unease creeping in. He swung his arm to push her again, but she moved faster this time. With one graceful turn, she caught his wrist and redirected his momentum, sending him off balance. He stumbled to the ground, his pride falling with him. The gym went quiet. Everyone stared, too shocked to understand what they had just seen. There was no anger in her face, no satisfaction, only control. Her movements were smooth and deliberate, every action measured, every reaction calm. She didn't hurt anyone. She didn't need to. Her silence alone spoke volumes. The bullies who had once laughed now stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. Then the coach rushed in, having heard the noise. He expected chaos, maybe a fight, but what he saw stopped him in his tracks. The girl stood still in the center of the room, her hands by her sides, breathing steady and eyes focused. The others looked humiliated and speechless, scattered around her like children caught doing something wrong. The coach glanced between them and her, trying to piece together what had just happened. For a long moment, no one said a word. It was as if time itself had paused to recognize what had taken place. She had defended herself without anger, without arrogance, with nothing but control and discipline. It was strength in its purest form, quiet, graceful, and undeniable. When she finally picked up her bag and walked away, no one dared to stop her. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the silent gym, a reminder that appearances can deceive and that true power never needs to shout. By the time the door closed behind her, the bullies had learned a lesson they would never forget, that sometimes the one you think is the weakest turns out to be the strongest of all. By the next morning, whispers had spread through every hallway, every classroom, and every corner of the school. The story of what happened in the gym had become the one thing everyone was talking about. The same students who had once laughed at her now looked at her differently. They watched her walk through the halls with quiet awe, realizing how wrong they had been. The bullies avoided her gaze, their arrogance replaced with shame. A few tried to approach her, mumbling apologies they barely knew how to express. But she didn't seek their forgiveness, nor did she demand their respect. She simply gave a small nod, the same calm expression on her face, and carried on with her day as though nothing had ever happened. It wasn't pride that guided her steps, it was peace. She had no desire to humiliate them back or make them feel what she had felt. The real victory for her was in knowing she had remained true to herself even when they tried to break her. In the days that followed, her story became more than gossip. Teachers spoke about her calm strength, the principal praised her composure, and the coach couldn't stop mentioning how she showed the true meaning of discipline. For many students, it was a moment of realization. They had spent so much time chasing popularity and attention that they had forgotten what real strength looked like. She had shown them that power wasn't about shouting louder or fighting harder. It was about knowing who you are and refusing to be shaken by cruelty. Every time someone saw her sitting quietly in the library or helping another student in class, they remembered that the girl they had once mocked had stood against her bullies without anger, without violence, and without losing her grace. Even the bullies began to change. The leader of the group stopped making jokes at others' expense, often walking away from trouble instead of starting it. Some of the students who had joined in the laughter began to defend others being picked on, almost as if they were trying to make up for what they had done. She never took credit for any of it, but everyone knew that she had started something. Her silence had created a ripple that transformed the atmosphere of the school. It was subtle, but it was powerful. Months passed, and by the end of the year she had become a quiet legend. Not because she wanted attention, but because her story reminded everyone of something they had forgotten, that appearances can deceive, and that true power often hides behind gentleness. She walked out of that school year the same way she had entered it, calm, humble, and unbothered. But now, every step she took carried the weight of quiet respect. She had changed nothing about herself, yet she had changed everything around her.